Hello everyone. So today I'll be sharing a flow chart of the arteries that flow through the axillary region, the brachial region and the forearm, and I'll help you memorize these arteries in an easier way. So first thing that we need to understand is the three branches of the aortic arch. So this is the aortic arch. Aortic arch will give us three branches. The branch on this side, that is the right hand side, will supply the right hand side of the body, while the branch on the left will supply the left hand side. So the right hand side will give rise to the brachiocephalic trunk, while the left hand side will give rise to two arteries, the common carotid artery this is the left common carotid artery and the left subclavian artery. The brachiocephalic trunk will give rise to two branches. First branch is the right common carotid artery, while the second branch of the brachiocephalic trunk is the right subclavian artery. The focus of this video will be the left and the right subclavian arteries. So the left and the right subclavian arteries will then give rise to the axillary artery, the arteries of the brachial region, and then the arteries of the forearm. So one thing that we need to remember here is that the right subclavian artery will come out from the brachiocephalic trunk, while the left subclavian artery will directly come from the aortic arch. Now let's move on to the course of the subclavian artery and how it supplies the arm and the forearm. So first we'll do the flow chart and then we'll understand the positioning with the help of a rough diagram. So let's start with the flow chart. So first we have the subclavian artery. The subclavian artery is between the anterior and middle scalene muscles. Below the clavicle, as its name suggests, subclavian. Sub meaning below, clavian meaning clavicle. So the subclavian artery goes below the clavicle but above the first rib. And once the subclavian artery has crossed the clavicle and the first rib, it's called the axillary artery. Now the axillary artery will pass through the axillary region. So what exactly is the axillary region? So let's say this is the trunk, this is the brachial region, this is the shoulder region. So this region, which is commonly known as the armpit region, is the axillary region. Now the axillary artery will give rise to 6 branches and we'll learn these branches in a very logical way. So let's look at the axillary region. Where is the axillary region located with respect to the thoracic region? It is lateral to the thoracic region and superior to the thoracic region. Therefore, the axillary artery, let's do the branches in green. The axillary artery will give superior thoracic branch. So it is superior to the thoracic region, the axillary region. It is also lateral to the thoracic region. Therefore, it will give the lateral thoracic branch. Now, we have the scapula over here, we have the clavicle over here, and the scapula and clavicle form a joint here called the acromioclavicular joint, which is in close proximity with the axillary region. Therefore, the acromial. The axillary region is also in front of the scapula. Therefore, the subscapular branch. Subscapular meaning in front of the scapula. So, the subscapular artery is also a branch of the axillary artery. And then finally, we are done with 4. And the final 2 are the anterior and posterior circumflex artery. So, the anterior circumflex artery. Then we have the posterior circumflex artery. So these were the branches of the axillary artery. Now, the axillary artery, once it crosses the teres major muscle, so the teres major, let's say it's here. Once the axillary artery crosses the teres major muscle, it will be known as the brachial artery. So, crossing teres major, it will be known as brachial artery. Now, since the brachial artery is a continuation of the axillary artery, we can just remember that the brachial artery will give one less branch. Axillary artery gives 6 branches. The brachial artery will give only 5 branches. The main branch, which is the deep brachial artery. Then we have the humeral, nutrient artery, the superior ulnar collateral artery, the inferior ulnar collateral artery, and finally we'll be having the muscular branches. Brachial artery, upon reaching the cubital fossa, will give rise to 2 arteries, the radial artery and the ulnar artery. Anterior part of the elbow region is called as the cubital region. So the radial and the ulnar artery will give recurrent collateral branches. So the radial artery, recurrent branches means they'll go on top. So the radial artery will give the radial recurrent collateral branch, and the ulnar artery will give 2 recurrent collateral branches. One is the anterior ulnar recurrent and the posterior ulnar recurrent. The radial recurrent collateral branch is going to anastomose with the deep brachial artery. So, I'll just write that. So, the anterior ulnar recurrent collateral is going to anastomose with the inferior ulnar collateral, while the posterior ulnar recurrent collateral branch is going to anastomose with the superior ulnar collateral. Now the radial artery will continue on the lateral aspect of the hand, but it will give some muscular branches, while the ulnar artery will also give muscular branches. The ulnar artery will also give the common interosseous artery, and this common interosseous artery is about 1 centimeter long and it arises from the radial tuberosity of the ulna. The common interosseous artery will then split into anterior interosseous and posterior interosseous. So the anterior interosseous Interosseous means between two bones or between bones. So the anterior interosseous will move on the anterior aspect between the radius and the ulna, which are the two bones of the forearm. And the posterior interosseous artery will run on the posterior aspect between the radius and the ulna. The anterior interosseous will then give a branch called the medial artery. Two important arteries are the nutrient artery of the radius and the nutrient artery of the ulna. The nutrient artery of the ulna arises directly from the ulnar artery. The nutrient artery of the radius arises from the anterior interosseous artery. Hence, this entire flowchart covers all the arteries that run in the axillary, brachial and forearm region and supply the upper limb. Now we'll revise this entire flowchart with the help of a rough diagram. So let's start the revision. Now we're drawing the aortic arch. This is the brachiocephalic trunk. This is the left common carotid artery and this is the left common subclavian artery. So this will supply the LHS, this will supply the RHS. The brachiocephalic trunk will give rise to two branches. This one, the first branch will be the common carotid artery but on the right, and the right subclavian artery. This is the right common carotid artery and the right subclavian artery. Now we'll be focusing on the left side. Now this is our left subclavian artery. So let's draw our clavicle. This is our clavicle and this is our first rib. So our left subclavian artery is going above the first rib and it's below the clavicle. Once it passes the rib and the clavicle, becomes the axillary artery. Now here we have the teres major muscle. Once the axillary artery will pass, so here we have the subclavian artery. Then it's past the clavicle and the first rib. It's the axillary artery. Now this is the teres major. The axillary artery has passed the teres major here. So here onwards it's called as the brachial artery. Now the brachial artery will go into the arm. This is the cubital region. So we'll go till the cubital region. It will divide into the ulnar and the radial artery. This is the radial side. This is the ulnar side. Now let's talk about the branches. So the axillary artery gives us 6 branches. The brachial artery is below the axillary artery and therefore it gives us 5 branches. The radial artery will give us a recurrent branch. The ulnar artery will give us an anterior and posterior recurrent branch. The ulnar artery will also give us a short common interosseous artery which is about 1 centimeter long. The common interosseous artery will divide into the anterior interosseous and the posterior interosseous. And the anterior interosseous will then give us the medial artery. That's all we have for today. Hope this video helped. Thank you.